Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
I am apparently not. My camera fell.
He said, I will have to edit after the taping. I have to watch a little one later today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the word later existed, but not late.
Okay. All right. So, tonight's episode, I want to talk about Tyranny. I don't know how up to date you stayed on the events of the world while you were in Alaska.
Not to, but some of the Los Angeles stuff did drift through.
Yeah. So, as you know, and our listeners don't know, I participated in recording a speaker at TFS this weekend.
TFS, what does that stand for?
Triangle Free Thought Society.
Oh, cool.
That's what it is, society, right?
That is 100% correct.
I was like, society didn't sound right when I said it. So I recorded the executive director, is that his title?
I believe, of American Humanist Association.
Of the American Humanist Association. I will have that up on YouTube. You could publish it, but I'll have it up on YouTube for you in the next couple hours because I've already edited it. I just need to upload it at this point. But for listeners and viewers, you may be really interested in checking that out. I thought it was great.
The link will eventually be in the show notes, right?
Yeah. The link will go in the show notes. He was really interesting. Humanism is something that apparently a lot of people don't know about. I didn't really understand it the way he made it really clear and concise. I think that a lot of people who may not want to think of themselves as atheists, or in some cases, people who are religious may consider themselves humanists.
Yeah, you can be a religious humanist or a secular humanist. Generally, when you say humanist, you mean secular humanist, but you don't have to be a secular humanist in the strictest sense. Yeah,
and they, this talk came a lot of, like if I have religious people who are, on the same boat as us, what do I do? And so that kind of came up. But one of the things that he mentioned at the beginning of his talk was the Thomas Paine quote, "These are the times that try men's souls," and how that was when he was facing tyranny 250 years ago. We're facing tyranny, and he said, "These are the times that try people's souls once again." And he mentioned tyranny, and I was not incredibly clear on what was going on in LA. To say that I'm incredibly clear now is a lie, because I doubt that if you're not in LA, I don't think you're probably getting a completely clear image because of all the media spin and stuff and outright propaganda in some cases.
I've seen some interesting posts, places like posting British news coverage saying this is so much more accurate than the U.S. news coverage.
Yeah, and there's a lot going on there, but it's not our first. Even though it seems for some people like the clear line where we entered into the realm of tyranny, I don't think it is our first dabble in tyranny in this.
And for those who are watching this 6 months from now or 5 years from now or listening, what's going on in Los Angeles? That is our dabble into tyranny.
So there was. You correct me if I'm wrong on this, but from what I understood was that they sent in National Guard to help deport some not undocumented immigrants that Governor Newsom and I apologize, I forget the mayor of Los Angeles's name. I had only heard it once in an article today, so I didn't know about her. But Governor Newsom, I know. They were sent in because Governor Newsom was refusing to do it.
Aaron Bass.
Okay,
Google is right.
Okay, they're refusing to take action on and deport undocumented immigrants.
Well, I think that the immediate cause was that, yes, that in general, but that they sent in like a fleet of ICE troops into white neighborhoods, but to where they felt safe going, to arrest immigrant workers in the restaurants and stuff, like cleaning up the restaurants.
Sure.
And very quickly, the people of Los Angeles, many people of Los Angeles, rose up in protests,
Hmm.
and they were nonviolent protests, but they were screaming and yelling like, "You're cowards! You're fascists! You should be ashamed of yourselves!" Those kinds of things. And the police didn't do anything to stop those nonviolent protests. So
Right.
Trump's like, "Well, I'm sending in the National Guard because I don't believe in the law, which says the federal government cannot send in troops against people without the Insurrection Act being passed or being triggered by the Congress." So, but why would the president care about law? That's silly.
Yeah. Well, so okay, so there's one piece that I've seen that I don't know how this exactly plays into it. I think it was like an incident that ended up being the justification in part of it. So as ICE was leaving the area, or whatever area that they had done the raids in, people were throwing, and I couldn't tell if this was rocks or what, but they were throwing things at the cars. And when I say people, I think it was literally like a half a dozen people. And I've seen other protests filmed of this past weekend where it was what looks like tens of thousands of people standing there peacefully. So like as is the case in every protest, probably throughout history, but also very in recent history, you have a couple people at least who are just fucking shit up, whether they're doing it on purpose as like plants or they're just genuinely on the right side but doing it the wrong way. Like we literally had what looked like a dozen people throwing those rocks or
I
whatever.
don't think as a podcaster, I want to take a position that it's the wrong way, but it's not the way the other
You know,
people at the protests were doing it.
no,
So I'm not going to
yeah.
say violence is always
Sorry,
wrong. So
I do not believe violence is always
yeah,
wrong.
but it's not the way that the majority of the protest was. I
Yeah.
think is
I
the wrong.
also think like they were throwing it at cars. They were not throwing it at people walking down the street. So to me, if anything, that is less violent than so many other ways
It's
of going
certainly less
about things.
violent than the ICE,
Oh
officers.
yeah.
Use that the word officers very loosely. The
Yeah.
ICE Gestapo. It's less violent than they are.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring it up because of that, but also it's not the only thing going on right now. Like, we've been seeing stuff like this for months, like littler like stuff.
Before I forget, let me say if you are going to any protests, and as Mike just mentioned, sometimes it's outside agitators doing violence to make it look like the protest is violent. But in any case, if you do not want it to be a violent protest and you are not part of a violent protest, what's going on right now? There are people saying, like, if you see violence happening, everybody just call it out and sit. So, like, if you're not
Mhm.
being violent, you just sit. So it ends up being the violent person standing by themselves in this thing doing it. So whether they're on
Yeah.
whatever side they're on or whatever their reason for violence is, they are standing alone being violent, not hidden by the crowd, and it's clear the crowd is not part of it. So
Yeah.
there's I don't know if there's hand gestures going on and what you're supposed to do to signal it. I'm not going to be able to go to any protests. I mean, I've been out of town for the last couple of weeks, and then there's protests this week, but I'm going to be at a Pride
Yeah.
festival, so I'm not going to be able to be at the protest. So I
Yeah.
haven't followed up exactly, but there is this way to disengage yourself from any violent act to make it easier to find the person who is doing it, or at least be
Mhm.
clear it's not part of your group.
Yes, and so two things that I want to mention to piggyback off what you just said. One is if you are at a protest and you are privileged for whatever reason. In this case, if we're protesting ICE raids, you're American-born, white, male, whatever, any privilege thing, you need to keep that in consideration as well. That you can't overstep. Maybe like I said the wrong way before, but maybe that wasn't the right thing to say. But don't overstep what the crowd is doing.
I'm going to make it violent, and I know
Yeah,
I'm not going to get deported for it, but the
right.
person next to me gets deported because I threw a brick.
Like during the Black Lives Matter protests, I feel like I was hearing stories about white kids who were ramping shit up, and it's like this isn't you're there to support, and if you're here, no, and that's not to say you can't use your voice, but like you have an obligation. If you're not there as an outside agitator purposely trying to fuck shit up, you need to be helping the community that is affected how they see fit.
And especially knowing that a lot of states, during Trump 1.0, passed laws saying like the organizers of a protest can be held legally responsible for what random people did during the protest. So like,
Yes,
you could be screwing up the organization that's trying to help by you choosing to be violent when it wasn't a risk they were willing to take.
right. So that leads me into the next piece, which is this come. If you're watching live, it's this coming Saturday. If you're not watching live, it is tomorrow because we're a week behind on recording. So tomorrow, if you're listening to this the day it comes out, there is what is being called No King's Day, and they are hoping to make it one of the biggest protest days in U.S. history. And I would be surprised if we, on Donald Trump's birthday and military parade day, and I know that it's also the anniversary of is it the Army or the Navy? One of the Navy, one of the military branches. It's their anniversary birthday, however they refer to that. And obviously, like, that is, I actually don't have any problem with them having a celebration for that. That's fine. But the military parade part of it is very dictatory, very tyrannical. But also, all of these National Guard and everything that's being kind of ramped up in California is almost like a test case for how we could potentially see things go this weekend on a more national scale. And so that is something to keep in mind going forward.
It's the 250th anniversary of the Army.
Okay.
And Flag Day. June 14th is Flag Day. And my friend Elliot's birthday.
Yeah. And so none of that is a problem. And I don't even mind if the president wants to have a party, but the tanks and the parade we're getting
and he
into...
wants to do it because he saw it in like Korea and other places and said, this is great. Shouldn't the military come by and celebrate me?
Not to mention the amount of damage it's going to do to the fucking roads, and they don't want to...
DC is great roads to begin with, so...
Yeah. So, that's that, I think that's an example.
Can I predict? Can I make a prediction? Again, I'm not going to be protesting this weekend because it's Pride in Apex, North Carolina. So if you're not protesting and you want to come support the LGBTQIA plus community in Apex, come on out to Pride. I'll be at the TFS table, and that stands for Triangle Free Thought Society, according to Mike. But I predict that it's some protest, maybe even the actual military parade. That's the most likely place for it. We will have a Tiananmen Square moment. Somebody will stand in front of the tank and perhaps be mowed down, but at least try to stand in front of the tank. We will have this is like you say, we were talking earlier, like it was LA where we tipped into Tyranny, where it's the most visual one. I think it's going to get more visual on Saturday.
Yeah.
I think that's where there's going to be, oh my God, look what's going on moments.
When I said though that when I agree with you.
I know you said that it may have been the visual one, but it wasn't. We've already been there.
But I don't even mean but I also mean, like, I think that what's going on in California right now is the dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
As far as sending in troops and shit.
That is the big one. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's pretty bad.
The dress rehearsal happened on I can't remember the name of the planet. If you watched Andor season 2, exactly what's going on right now is what season 2 was about.
I'm 2 episodes in because I got really behind on a bunch of other stuff, but it's funny. I watched episode 2 and I was just like, because I have a conservative friend who loves the show. I'm like, how do you love the show? And
well, I mean, I think the key to this show is it shows that the people who work for the Empire on the lower levels think they're doing the right thing, even if they don't believe in, like, they don't really know what the Empire is doing, and they don't see the evil of it. They're inside and they can't see the forest through the trees.
I get that better than watching the show as an audience member and seeing, like, they in the episode I watched, they mentioned illegals, like they used the term illegals on getting your papers straight. There was like several things, and it was like, these aren't Star Wars words; these are America words. Like, these are, they're not talking about like like credits, and they're basically.
Well, I think exactly what's going on right now is what plays out over the season. Like, they had Project 2025 in front of them when they wrote the script, because but even the things that are happening in Los Angeles over the last week or two is what the season is about. You'll see as you go on.
Yeah.
So I did want to also say that a little nod to your never-ending battle to have Phantom Menace recognized as a great movie and a crucial movie. The idea that fascism starts with a trade war. Well, Lucas was ahead of his time.
Yeah, and when Trump was elected the first time, I don't remember how far into his first term it was. I said, who's going to be the Jar Jar Binks? And then I said, I posted the same day, I think it's Lindsey Graham. And obviously, like, we've had several Jar Jar Binkses now, but
Jar Jar Vance.
the I vote to give President Trump. This is more of a Roger Rabbit than a Jar Jar, but I'm trying not to do the racist version of Jar Jar. Uh,
It's racist when the guy doing it was like, no, this is something kind of my,
yeah,
like me doing a Jewish accent.
right. But me doing a Jewish accent is racist. So, like, yeah, it's not racist when
That's
Ahmed Best does it. It could be
yeah.
racist if I did it. So, um, but yeah, so yeah, I wanted to. So back to the stuff in California. This is something that happened in this past week that is, I think that they are. It's not attached to the California stuff, but it is concurrent. So one of the big problems we've seen over the last 4 or 5 months since we've been seeing these people get people getting pulled, whether they're anti Zionist, anti Israel, whatever, like college students that are speaking up, getting pulled, or if they're the people in LA getting, undocumented people getting deported for that reason. We're seeing that a lot of these ICE agents are covering their face and refusing to show identification when taking people. And something that I saw on Instagram this past week, that apparently happened in Raleigh is a woman was told she was being detained by an ICE agent. She had seen how bad it goes when you fight it, so she decided not to fight it in person, like at the moment, and thought that she would go along with them and then hopefully be able to appeal it. And in doing that, the guy tried to rape her, and he was not an ICE agent. He was, so that's why, and the person that made the Instagram video that I saw was saying, you need to show your face and you need to show identification because we need to know it's actually government officials. Not that that's helpful in some situations, but like if you're not doing that, you could have any uh, bad faith
The irony,
actor.
it's what they say will happen if you let trans people use the bathroom of their choice is what they are enabling
Right.
by having secret Gestapo
Mhm.
police.
Right, right. And I know that like their
Because
response to that would
everything
be,
they say is their aspiration or a confession.
yeah,
This is what I would do if I was given the opportunity
yeah, oh yeah,
every time.
yeah. And and that's the that guy that did the ice that pretended to be ice is probably just an opportunist who,
But and that's not a one time story. I mean, I don't have
yeah,
facts and figures, but I've heard that more than once from different places.
yeah,
It's been happening.
yeah. And it makes sense because we have people that have impersonated other police, other government officials in order to take advantage of a system in a situation where they think that it's easy to do so for all kinds of
And
purposes.
this is the
And
easiest one because there are no uniforms or badges.
right, and there's no, and we're seeing people just get dragged away so you can be as brutal as you want. And it's like if a bunch of people 5 to 10 years ago saw a non-black person getting ripped out of a car or yanked somewhere by a police officer, almost certainly anybody around would like stop and look, would video and do and not to say that's not happening now, but like it's becoming harder and harder because people are more and more scared. And the reason I say not black people is because it's been happening to black people forever. And yes, we get it on video sometimes, but not always. But like you have that happening with police. Now we're having people get yanked, and it's like so common, so obvious, and terrifying that like we saw the video or pictures of the woman in Cambridge getting pulled, by dozens of ICE personnel. I don't. You said not
I got
officers.
a
I
lot
don't
of
even. I
officers.
don't even know what their title is. They're
Gestapo. I think Gestapo
ICE.
is the title.
Yeah. And so like, how do you fight that? And it comes back to what we were saying about. We've said it before a couple weeks ago about if there is no due process for one, there's no due process for all. So you might be thinking like, well, I'm not here illegally, so I won't be worried about. But like, if they're yanking you and
If
not
they
paying
throw you in
attention,
a van and send you to El
yeah,
Salvador,
yeah,
your passport being at home doesn't help you.
they could go yank any woman that they think that they want to attack, and they could do it to
So,
anyone
so the
regardless.
key is if you see people that are not clearly identified as uh, authority figures doing something, call the police right away and report a kidnapping in progress, because that's what it is. Well, it's
Yeah,
what it is anyway, but it's definitely what it is if you don't know what they are. I mean, don't necessarily interfere yourself. Don't put yourself in danger. Don't put the person in danger. I'm not saying be violent, but do the most violent thing you can do in America: call the police. I mean, the
yeah,
most violent people in the world, call them.
yeah. But yeah, and because I think that there's
At
enough.
least that might trigger due process, if nothing else.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know what else we could do. I also think that even though I don't always trust the police, and I think that the police have their obvious problems, I don't know that the police are completely aligned in this way, especially if you're in an area like Los Angeles, for example. They were saying that the police aren't having a problem with the protesters. The police have been participating in pride parades and like helping make sure that stuff goes straight and everything. That was
I
what
don't
part of
think, I don't think that's the right
goes not
approach.
go, goes they're
Smoothly.
they're conversion therapying no goes smoothly. um and I know the LAPD is
I mean,
not well
it
is
was the
not
most
well
notorious example of not good police.
right, but that doesn't mean
But,
they're not
but,
rehabbing.
but compared to what ICE is doing, they're angels.
Right, and maybe they're in a they've been, I don't know, I'm not in LA, and but from what I saw and what I've seen, people that are on the ground, they're saying like the police are not part of the problem, and that's part of the reason they sent in the National Guard, is because the police were following the authority
Following the law.
of Governor Newsom, and yeah, of like, we're not gonna, you know,
We're not
sanction.
escalating the situation and making it
Right.
worse. In this rare case, normally they do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm waiting for some of these Second Amendment, fanatics who say the reason I need a gun is if the government's a tyranny. For someone to see someone being assaulted and not know it's ICE, even if they
Yeah.
support ICE, and shoot somebody, and then what do they say then? Well, we're for you having a gun, we're for you being an attorney, and for ICE being a secret Gestapo police who don't identify themselves. At some point, a
Oh yeah.
tragedy is going to happen in that direction versus the direction that it's currently going.
The problem. So I had the conversation with a friend of mine who is pro guns, for the pro Second Amendment, for the reasons that you just laid out. During it was the Michael Brown, he was the one in like
Mike Brown in Baltimore, right? Or
no
near not Baltimore,
Missouri.
Ferguson.
Ferguson, yes, that's the one. That was one. Sorry, there's been a lot,
Yeah,
and it's hard.
every city's got a tragedy. Yeah.
During the like around the time of the Michael Brown protests, I was saying, like, we were talking about the gun issue, and they said, well, we need them in case the government ever gets tyrannical, and I was like we're there, like we're like we
Not to me. I mean, tyrannical to
not
me.
no yeah, and I understand, yeah, and I remember having the conversation. I don't know that she'll want me to out her, but it's years ago, and I'm taking this a little bit out of context.
Come on, out Samantha. It's fine.
No, my mom. We during one of it may not have been Michael Brown. It may have been one of the other, many other ones. We were talking about the idea of like getting pulled over as a black person, and my mom said, if what was going on in the country was going on and I was a black person, I might feel like the most safe thing for me to do is shoot first when I get pulled over. And I was like, okay, Mom, you're real close to getting on the right side of this. Like my mom
I'd
is.
like to say, for the record, I am well aware the Second Amendment was not intended so that you can fight against your own government. The Second Amendment was intended so that states could regulate guns in their state, and they can have militias, and it wasn't the federal government couldn't tell the state government what to do because the Bill of Rights only affected the federal government when it was passed. It did not restrict states' abilities. So all the bullshit about states aren't allowed to restrict guns, that was invented by Anton Scalia in the Supreme Court in Heller versus DC. Before that, before the 21st century, no one dreamt that the Second Amendment meant you can have guns to kill the government.
Yeah.
It's just been out there. I see
Also,
their argument. I know it's a bullshit argument, and they're
up in
wrong. I'm just saying it.
up until some point in the Reagan administration, the NRA was pretty
They're
on.
a gun safety hunting organization before
Yeah.
the
Oh yeah,
company.
and when the Black Panthers were like, let's legally get guns so we can police our own areas, since the police won't come in our areas, all of a sudden white people were pretty on board with gun control measures. Like if you want guns,
So if ICE people start getting shot, the people who say their Second Amendment to stop tyranny are going to be so on board with death penalties for the people who defend themselves against ICE. The fact that they've been saying it for 2 decades is going to mean nothing when it's done and it's not them doing it.
yeah. So,
Because hypocrisy is their middle name.
yeah. But yeah, it's real scary shit. And you and I, whatever day it was that Madhavi was on last, we had this conversation before we went on the air about the idea of leaving the country and not being able to get back in the country. And
we went to vacation in Alaska. We're not going to Hawaii just because it's harder to get back in from Hawaii, even though it's not leaving the country.
Yeah,
airport wise, it's more difficult.
Right, and we talked about, like, Sarah and I have talked about leaving, like, not leaving, like, oh, like, Trump's president, we're going to leave, like going on vacation. Like
we didn't want to go to Canada.
Yeah.
Like on our way to Alaska, we didn't want to deal with it. We went to Seattle for a day and then flew from Seattle to Fairbanks. So we did not set foot in Canada because of the going through the country's issue.
Yeah, and
our phones, your security on your phone. Here, a little tip going through customs or whatever. The police can force you to like stare at your phone to make it unlock or fingerprint unlock. They can't force you to put in a passcode because the law is stupid and archaic. And the law that says you have privacy over your passcode didn't take biometrics into account. So they can force you to open your phone so they can look through your phone if you use biometrics. So before traveling, turn biometrics off and make your phone locked with a passcode so that because you can say no to unlocking your phone that way.
Yeah, just that's good.
Which we all did. We turned off just in case. We turned off our phones before we traveled in the airport.
That's good to know. Sarah kept saying like that I should probably bring a burner if we went and not bring my real phone. And I was like, and I kind of was not sure how to deal with it. She's like, Sarah hasn't shared anything that she thinks would be problematic. And I'm like, I haven't shared. Everything I've shared has been public. And she goes, yeah, that's not helpful.
That makes it easier to find it.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't shared anything that I think under a real government, like under the government we are used to over my lifetime, nothing that I would be considered a illegal act to say. Like I haven't called for violence. I have just shared memes and shit, but that doesn't mean that, I saw something that they were trying to figure out a way to arrest people for calling him Taco or talking about Taco Trump or whatever. So like,
yeah,
the
he was asked what would be the point that would require using like the Marines on U.S. soil, and he said, "Well, whatever I decide." Something along those aren't the exact words, but something like that. Like he would know what the point is. There is no official. Here's what has to happen. It's just him deciding it's time to happen. And our lovely Supreme Court has said that he, at least, is not breaking the law when he orders illegal action to be taken. He's immune from punishment. So hopefully, the people under him know they're not immune, except while he's president, when he can pardon them. But if they don't get a pardon before he's out of office, they can at least be brought to justice, even though he can't officially legally.
Yeah, or if if they break state laws instead of federal. I mean, I think that's going to have to be a thing we're going to have to do once we get into a reasonable administration.
State
We're gonna have,
laws in a blue state that's willing to prosecute because
yeah,
a red state's not going to.
yeah. Let's talk about how we deal with tyranny, because I genuinely don't know. I know how to. I think we all are thinking two ways right now. We need to think about how do we keep ourselves safe in within this tyrannical upheaval
Atmosphere,
atmosphere.
situation,
Yeah,
period. Yeah.
because I think that's a one thing. But then we also need to deal with the idea of how do we resist and move forward. Like eventually tyranny can affect elections, and tyranny can't. And I would imagine it will. How do we move forward and get out of this? And how do you and I let try to avoid calling for violence? Even though I'm not saying violence is never the answer, let's try to avoid
I'm just not
call.
calling for it.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah. I mean, people like to point out that, Martin King Jr. was a nonviolent movement. And yeah, that's true for his movement. But at the same time, violent movements were happening at the same time. Like
yeah,
different things were happening that all worked together for civil rights,
yep,
not just the one we like to focus on because it's nonviolent.
yeah,
It's a combination of things, but I'm not calling for anything. I'm just stating historical fact. Violence
yeah.
does make change, whether we like to
Oh
say
yeah,
it
oh
doesn't
yeah,
or not. But I would say people should go, especially those of privilege who are not at risk of just randomly being arrested, not as high a risk of randomly being arrested, should continue to go to protests.
mm-hmm.
Um, if they get violent, turn around and leave. Fine, if that's what you want to do. That I wouldn't tell anyone not to do that. But we need to keep the pressure on it. And here's the thing I've heard: who are you protesting? Because Trump isn't going to change because there's a protest. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's true. But sometimes you hear the term of, oh, you're just preaching to the choir. But preaching to the choir is important because what gets the choir fired up to sing to everyone else.
mm-hmm.
So sometimes the reason to protest is to get others to protest. It is to keep the fire burning. It's to keep people motivated and engaged and knowledgeable about what's going on so that when election season rolls around, they will vote. And not just vote,
Oh yeah,
if you're on the Facebooks right now or the social media and you follow any local politicians, they're campaigning right now for the next round of elections on local levels for
yeah,
primaries and stuff. That's already happening. One of the in North Carolina, one of the Democratic former Congressman Wiley Nickel has made no secret that he's going after Tom Tillis' Senate seat. I don't know if anyone else has announced in the Democratic primary for that, but he's been very active. And so be aware of who's thinking. Volunteer for the one you want. Like
mm-hmm.
former Governor Cooper might run, in the primary against Wiley. I don't know what his plans are, but he might. So if you like one of those two people, be ready to
Yeah,
volunteer for them. Make calls. If there's someone else you want who's not a white male might run for it, be ready to volunteer for them if that's what you want. Be ready
yeah,
to support. And so I think these protests are important. Being engaged, even if you never have before, this is the time.
yeah,
Time, even if it's starting small and saying, "Oh, my town council election's coming up, and I really like this person who's running. I'm going to volunteer to write postcards for her and send them out,
yeah,
just to do something to get engaged." It's a good time to get more engaged. Up
yeah.
whatever your current level of engagement is, raise it up a level.
I agree. I also, back to the protests for a second. I think that if we can keep the protests as heavily attended and peaceful as possible, we are also, in addition to getting us who are on the left fired up, we will hopefully be giving some ability to the Mitt Romney types and the John McCain types who are on the right, who are.
McCain's dead.
I know he is, but he's a good example of what I'm talking about. Of
Lynn
people who.
Cheney and
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
I mean, there's not too many living ones that I think are great examples. So, like John
No, I
McCain.
mean I think it's
Yeah,
original. Liz Cheney is evil in 97% of
yeah.
her ways, but in
But
this
we,
one thing of wanting to defeat Trump, she's not.
yeah, we need to keep giving them the ability to say, like, hey, obviously there is, this isn't just this is not just like a little movement. This is a huge thing, and we can, I have the ability to go.
It's part of that preaching to the choir. Let people know you are
Yeah,
not alone being unhappy about this. If you're someone who doesn't watch news and you know what's going on, maybe this will break through and you'll hear about
mm-hmm.
this. Keep having those protests. Keep helping people who don't have the privilege you have. We all have privilege more than someone else. You know,
Yeah.
there's always a bigger fish, there's always a smaller fish. So use what you have to help those who need it.
Yeah.
Keep the pressure on. Again, be more engaged in local politics. People like to complain, oh, there's nobody even in the party I like. There's no Democrat as liberal as I want. Well, maybe if you were protesting more, somebody would say, oh, there's someone who would vote for me. So someone who's not running
Yeah.
right now. And I'm not saying you have to run, though, there's organizations that will help you run if you feel like you're not being represented. But
Hmm.
there's also people who are not running because they don't know you would vote for them.
Yeah.
Get out there. Make yourself known, make your positions known so
Yeah.
people know that they need support.
Oh yeah. Pre 2016, I think that if anybody had like pitched just to a small group of at a party or something Bernie's ideas, people would be like, well, no one's going to vote for that. And look at how, I mean, not that Bernie got elected, or even won the primary, but Bernie had a huge support group, and like there is a benefit to that. We need to get there.
Yeah, well, there's things like
Yeah.
pre-Andrew Yang. If you talked about universal basic income, 90% of people are like, that's a pipe dream. That's not something realistic. But then when someone who was taken seriously said it, now it's seriously part of the discussion. And
Yeah.
I'm not economy minded enough to know how good or not good it is, but it used to be
Yeah.
a joke. And now it's
Yeah.
a serious discussion point. And I will point out in the game Monopoly, which is making fun of capitalism and critiquing how horrible capitalism is, you get UBI because when you pass Go, you collect $200. Everybody gets universal basic income for collecting Go every time they go around the board. In the game that says how bad capitalism is, even they understand you need a universal basic income.
Yeah. One thing that I want to talk about with as far as how do we deal and how do we move forward is the people who don't see that it's tyrannical because they're not affected yet. How do we talk to them, and how do we try? Because I think there are people who will say they were illegal immigrants, and they were here illegally, and
The typical right wing mentality is until it happens to someone I know, or until it affects
yeah,
me, or someone in my circle, however wide that circle is for that individual,
yeah,
it doesn't exist and it's not true.
hmm,
And I don't think there's a magic answer. I think for some people, it's talk to them this way. For some people, it's talk to them this way. Some people, it's wait until it hits their circle. And
yeah,
what we have to be willing to do is acknowledge when someone was actually unaware of what was really going on and let them, or even if, like Lynn Cheney, we know she's evil in 97% of the time, but we still allow her. Elon Musk is evil and piece of shit, and the left is not reclaiming him, but we're letting him talk shit about Trump. And when he's right, we're going to support the things he says that are
yeah,
correct. Reinforce doing the correct thing. Don't say, well, you were a Nazi last week, so we don't want your, rocket science, Dr. Von
fair,
Braun. You have to take what you can get.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, I think there's a lot of like I'm going home I'm going to Massachusetts this coming week, and I would expect that I'm going to have some conversations that are going to be uncomfortable, but I want to know how to like say like, do you really like at what point do you get to the like they came for those of us who aren't there yet, how do you get what's the line? Is it literally like then they came for me, or can you see it like one step ahead of you, or like
Yeah.
and it's
At least now it's like first they came for the socialists, and I stood up because I know the rest of this fucking quote.
yeah, but
It's not a
it
poem, by the way; it's a quote. So please, people, stop calling it a poem.
yeah. Anyway, yeah, so I want to I just think
Yeah, I think similar to I'm not advocating violence, but I'm also not decrying it when other people think it's the right. I don't think there's a one way that works. It's
yeah,
kind of like our good friends over at the Scathing Atheist talk about how people write to them saying making fun of religion isn't a way to get converts, and then
yeah,
they're like, it fucking worked for the three of us. With three of us on the podcast, felt stupid enough for our beliefs at some point where so we got listened to it. So for some people, it does work to ridicule. For some people, it's to hold their hand. For some people, it's to give them logic and rational facts. For some people, it's when it hits them. All the approaches are worthy of trying because some work for different people. We all have different ways that we take in information.
yeah. I was looking up Rainbow Coalition because I am not super duper familiar with it,
Is
but
that Reverend Jesse Jackson's original organization.
Him and Fred Hampton.
Yeah.
But when you started saying I've said it before with atheism, like you mentioned, that like Matt Dillahunty, you know, beating people into submission is not going to work for everybody. But it's a viable thing that we
You
need.
listen to his debates all the time.
Yeah, we on our next episode I want to talk about some of the stuff I've been listening to.
He and I had a lovely evening sharing some
No,
silver Avion tequila together a couple of years ago. He's a lovely man.
he seems like a really I would love to hang out with him. I would not want to be on the opposite side of an argument with him. But I think that there's a legitimate purpose for that, as well as, you know, when I was coming out of at the end, and it's, you know, it's obviously a lot different than like somebody who's fighting for their religion when I was at the point that I was when I met you, but very soft, you know, handling of that. And I think we need just like we need representation across the spectrum. So you know, when you watch, I always think about it. I'm going to go with race for a second because I think race works in a really good example, which is because race is the most obvious and visible thing typically. Uh, if you only know one black person, your opinion of black people may be, especially depending on what age range you are and what generation, if you only know one black person, your entire opinion of black people can be based on that black person. The more black people you know, the more you go, oh, well, yeah, Joe's a jerk, but Bob is great. And Lisa is amazing. And so, you know, you get to this point where you have a fleshed out opinion of. And I think the same thing is true with atheists. Oh yeah. Matt Dillahunty is really intense with the like hammering his points, but this person is really kind of compassionate and comes from a place of curiosity, and we can have a different conversation.
No, I'll say,
And
Matt, when you're talking about Matt being that way, that's not necessarily his default personality. That is
yeah,
the particular radio show, call-in show that he
yeah.
does. So
Oh
you
yeah,
want people to come in for that. He's
yes,
not like
yes.
going to their door to their
Mm-hmm.
house. So just to be clear, for those who don't
I'm
know
not.
what Dillahunty is,
I'm not
he does
trying.
a YouTube show with a call-in where people call in and
Yeah,
try
yeah.
to defend their beliefs to him. So the adversarial thing is the nature of what he's doing in
Yes,
that sense.
yeah, yeah.
Just to
I'm
say,
not. I'm not trying to shit on him.
yeah,
I'm just saying, like,
just people who don't
I.
know Matt as well as we do.
Yeah. So anyway, there's that, and I think that when we talk about how we can help people who are voting right, even if they aren't necessarily in all the ways that we, you know, I think your average voter is different than your average politician that they vote for, in the fact that like a politician may have almost certainly has ulterior motives because they want to get elected, they want to get bribes, they
Yeah.
want to get
I mean,
whatever.
Trump sending the National Guard in may be completely a power play just to test, can I start doing this for things
Yeah,
that I want to do? It may have nothing to
especially
do with
this
the
coming. That's what I meant when I said that. With like, it's a dress rehearsal for this coming weekend. Like,
yeah.
I wonder if it was, because he knows. Like, I'm sure that, you know, National We Have No King's Day or whatever they're calling it has been advertised for months now, and all of a sudden the week before that, we have one of America's biggest cities gets essentially invaded by, you know, as like a test run. But I think that like your average person, like who votes for him, you know, they may not consider themselves racist, or they may not, all these different things, and so they need to see, yeah, we can beat them over the heads with facts, but we also need to do these other things because we different tactics different tactics will get different people, and we need to get as many people as absolutely possible in these times, because numbers are going to be our biggest friend. Even if numbers aren't going to do the whole job for us, we need as many people standing up and saying this is wrong as possible, because eventually, oh, I'm a National Guards person and I'm going, and my family is in the city that I'm going to invade, or, you know, like, we need we don't we there's obviously ways that they can get around that, like they did in World War I by shuffling the line after Christmas, but we have to make it as hard as possible to do the wrong thing. So
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. As far as tyranny, I did look up. So I looked up the definition, and it just says cruel and oppressive government or rule. I liked the way that Fish Stark, who I was mentioning before, I didn't mention him by name, but he's the executive director of the American Humanist Association. He said that tyranny, basically I'm pretty sure he was quoting Thomas Paine, and I'm going to fuck up the quote. Tyranny is lack of liberty, and so when you have people who are being, lack of liberty, taking away due process is a lack of liberty. It's one of the most fundamental liberties that we have, and so we're there's no world in which I can see that this isn't at least starting to cross the line into tyranny. So I don't see how anybody can deny it. But
yeah, but the thing is, it's kind of like, again, go back to Andor, watching the characters in Andor. When you support what they're doing and you're blind to the tyranny aspect, and it's just like,
sure.
No, this is good government and tight and law and order. Like and when you let yourself be blind to the tyranny, it's your side doing it, kind of thing.
I had family on the Death Star, and
Andor takes place before the Death Star. Duh.
Yeah, I know. I don't know enough.
Before and during. Season 2 is during.
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, the Death Star was being.
By the way, as soon as you finish Season 2 of Andor, the next day or same day, depending on time of day, you need to watch Rogue One, because Rogue One is a different movie right after Andor.
Oh yeah, that's how I felt about the prequels after watching Clone Wars.
Yeah.
If you watch the prequels, or you watch, a few years ago at the beginning, I watched not everything in order, because eventually I crapped out before the sequel trilogy, but I watched from Phantom Menace all the way up till Boba Fett or whatever was the last thing chronologically at that point. Not, I didn't go beyond that really, because I've seen the sequels enough now. Once of the third one was fine. But when you do that, when you get to like Revenge of the Sith is significantly better after having watched Clone Wars. So,
well, it's funny because it's like when I was young, I used to read the novelization of all the Star Trek and Star Wars movies after the movie came out, and they're able to fix the flaws. Oh, there's a plot hole. I'll plug it. Like, why is there a hole in the Death Star that just goes down to you just blow up the whole fucking thing? And then you watch Rogue One, and the guy's like, I intentionally put a hole that if you should have missed it, it blows up the whole thing. So you can plug plot holes, and that's, I think, the Clone Wars and kind of Rebels are able to do. Like, here's things people have been complaining about for years. Let's give justification of this is why. It's kind of like when I watched the Two Towers movie. I hated it in the theaters because Faramir's character fucking sucks compared to the book. And then in the extended edition, they had flashback scenes of why he's acting the way he's acting, quote unquote, out of character. And I'm like, oh, now I love it. Like that you justified, which they did, when they made the movie, they just cut the scenes for pacing or whatever. But But sometimes you can go back in these cartoons and these filler episodes and these prequels and give reasons for the things that seem like problems. Like I get pissed off when people say stormtroopers have bad aim. Stormtroopers have great aim. In Star Wars, they were letting them escape so they can follow them to Endor. That was
no, Yavin.
Yavin, thank you. I lost it in my head. They were letting them escape so they could follow Yavin. That's why they missed. They had perfect aim, and they were missing with their perfect aim.
Obi-Wan even says
only Imperial stormtroopers are so precise.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe. Don't have to storm out because that's a direct quote.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the Imperial stormtroopers are being sent to LA, and they're being precise. And again, like you said, right now it's a test run, so maybe they're missing on purpose. So let's see what happens on June 14th.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what happens. I realized also that Sarah and I and Logan will be
I know
driving
you've been driving through it.
most of our day will be most of it will be Saturday. We're leaving Friday after school gets out, but we will probably stop in like Maryland for an overnight.
DC.
We have to. Well, we'll do the peninsula side to avoid usually to avoid DC and Baltimore, and I'll have to like reiterate that to Sarah, um, but yeah, not only will we between that going on, that protest and pride parades, because I think one thing that I think is helpful in spirit, at least, is not only to say, "Hey, we're unhappy about this," to say, "Hey, we're not going away about this." And I think that's an important thing. So, like, pride parades can't stop, so we do this.
Yeah,
Pride parades need to get
the cravats are splitting our forces. Joseph has work. Madhav and Leo will be. I'll be at Apex Pride. Madhav and Leo will drop Joseph at work. Then they'll go into Raleigh for No Kings. Yeah, so we're splitting our forces for the various things going on. Same for TFS. Like half the board
yeah,
of directors will be at Pride, and half of us will be at various marches.
yeah. Because I hope that, like, I hope when we look back on it Monday, Tuesday, whatever they start reporting the
Indeed.
numbers,
Happy days.
when they start reporting numbers, I hope they're saying, yeah, well, we got 65 million people protested, or whatever the number is going to be. But we also had another 10 million who were at pride parades that day, and like, who were saying, because especially with this particular government that we're dealing with right now, pride parades are a protest. When we are when Pete Hegseth is trying to take names off a boat of Harvey Milk, who served in 2 conflicts, and because he was in Korea and somewhat in Vietnam, I read this past week. And you're taking there was another person who I'm spacing on that they're taking names off. Like, pride is a protest against this government. The Pride Parade, and Pride Month. So, all right. Do you have anything we should before we get into the sign off stuff?
No, I think we got a lot of stuff out there.
Okay. Um, I'm gonna assign homework, which is like, if you're protesting, like, please let us know about it, like, and like how it goes, and how share with us. We will, our Instagram and everything else. We will share if you anything that is if you're at a protest. We'll share those pictures for you if you want, because I want uh, you know I want us to be as vocal and loud as possible. And I don't mean us as in me and Matthew. I mean us as in the people who are resisting tyranny. All right, Matthew. Now we can go on to the.
You know what? If you're resisting tyranny by watching this video, do me a favor. Like the video. If you're resisting tyranny by listening to this podcast, do me a favor and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can resist tyranny on a weekly basis. You know what? If you want to do it on a timely basis, ring the notification bell. Go through all of our videos and make comments below. Even if you have nothing to say, just comment saying, hey, I watched this video. Hey, Matthew, beard's coming in nicely. Did you go to Alaska for 2 weeks and not bring a razor? Yes, I did. All that helps the channel grow, and helping the channel grow is fighting tyranny.
Yep.
So thank you for opening your eye holes to us, but do all of the social media things. And I bet there's things you could do for audio too, but I'm not an expert in that.
Yeah, if you go on to whatever your podcast app of choice is, and give us a thumbs up, 5 stars, follow, a like, do all of it. Anything that is beneficial to the podcast, do that. Give us a review or a comment, because I know Spotify does comments on theirs. Any of that. If you want
Tell
to
a friend.
tell a
Tell an
friend.
enemy. I don't give a
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah, and hey, recommend a specific episode. Like, if you have a friend who doesn't understand that this is tyranny, recommend this episode. Or I am 100% spacing on what our last episode was, but share an episode specifically. If you want to help us in another way, you can give us gifts of money over at patreon.com/talking about the big stuff. And there we have 4 tiers: a $0 tier, which just allows you to get the podcast as usual, and it allows you to see these live streams when they're live.
And just tells Patreon that you follow the podcast.
Yep, and it notifies you when we're going live that way. The $1 option gets you the edited version, but a little early. The $3 version gets you a less edited version, so it's still cleaned up, like as far as like it doesn't sound terrible, but it's less censored.
It's edited for content, so my profanity comes through a lot more clearly.
Yep. And then the $10 version tends to have a little bit of like
our horses. It's got our horses.
Yeah, it has our banter at the beginning, and then if there's something that's a little extra saucy, I leave it on there.
And the good thing about doing Patreon, whether it's the pay one or the 0 one, is you get to an instant access to the back catalog. It's a good, easy way to get the back catalog. So if you want to listen to our last conversation about irrational anger, Mike, who can't remember anything,
it's been 2 weeks, and I've been deep in the midst of trying to finish my book.
Yeah, but keep reading.
Writing. I'm editing my first novel.
All 3 of those. But you see, listen about irrational anger. We had conversations about what do you do when a friend tells you that they're doubting their religion and they're feeling like they're losing it. Do you push them over the fence? What do you do? How do you support that? We did self-flagellation because Mike is into that. We had a lot of previous conversations, so check them out on patreon.com/talk.
He's reading that off of a card. He doesn't remember.
Reading it off the app, actually.
Yeah. No, but you know what I'm talking about when I say that, right?
No, I don't.
Oh, there's some episode of Celebrity Jeopardy on SNL where Alex Trebek's being cocky, and Sean Connery goes, he doesn't know the answers, he reads them off of a card.
And
anyway.
Speaking of cod, we were in Alaska for the last 10 days, and Madhavi had some delicious cod.
Nice. All right. So you get any last thought?
I just want to thank you all for joining us to talk about the big stuff and making it through to the end, because one day you may not be allowed to listen.
One day soon.
Coming to a tyranny near you.
Remember, the conversation doesn't end here. It's just the beginning. If you have thoughts or questions or topics you'd like us to tackle in a future episode, drop us a line on our social media channels. Engage with this video when you are now watching it as a VOD on YouTube. Send us an email. We love hearing from our listeners, bringing us topics, because if you leave it up to the 3 of us, we're going to eventually be talking about underwater basket weaving. So we would appreciate you guys reaching out a little bit. Don't forget to subscribe to Talking About the Big Stuff on your favorite platform. Give us a 5-star rating. Engage with it. Criticize us. We need to grow and be better, and you're going to help us be there. You're going to help us get to that point. It really helps us more to reach out and also to keep the conversation going. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more big ideas and more thought-provoking discussions. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep talking about the big stuff.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.